Well, the Indonesian government has approved the purchase of 1 million hectares of Australian farmland to raise its own cattle to be transported back to feedlots at home. Prime Minister-elect Tony Abbott says Australia is open for business, but the National's Barnaby Joyce has called on Australians to make a big noise to help him put a stop to the Indonesian plan. Kerry Brewster reports.
Although unclear which part of Australia Indonesia wants to buy, it's believed an official delegation has looked at several Queensland and Northern Territory cattle stations. Now Indonesia's cabinet, under pressure to lift its country's food production, has approved a 1 million hectare purchase to be run by a state-owned company.
There you go, mate.
The man touted as Australia's next Agriculture Minister, senior National Party figure Barnaby Joyce, says he's ventilating the bleeding obvious by asking what's in it for us.
If we have another country that just owns the place in Australia and breeds their own and sells it to themselves, then that's hardly going to benefit the sale yards in Tamworth and in Dubbo and in Longreach. We've got to make sure that it's our product that's going on the boat to Indonesia.
But Territory cattlemen say in local terms, 1 million hectares is only twice the size of an average property.
If you look at the big properties in the Northern Territory, that's probably going to run something like 50,000 head of cattle. So you're probably looking at a turn-off of maybe 15,000 head a year. And you put that in, you compare that with the exports to Indonesia this year, which is around 300,000 head. And I think it puts it in perspective. That's only about 5% of the total cattle that are going to Indonesia. So buying 10,000 square kilometres of country and running cattle is not going to result in market domination.
And Barnaby Joyce will struggle to persuade his coalition colleagues to tighten the rules governing land sales to foreign buyers.
I think we've got to do what is in Australia's national interest. And if selling a bit of land to a foreigner is in our national interest, and it might be in some circumstances, particularly if that person is going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in that land, well, I'm in favour of it.
The Coalition has promised to reduce the threshold price for consideration of farmland sales to foreigners, but the Foreign Investment Review Tribunal and the Treasurer will still decide whether purchasers can proceed on the basis that they're in the national interest. Barnaby Joyce believes in this case it isn't.
Naturally enough, people will say, well, that's partisan, that's parochial, that's xenophobic, but it's not, because there's no way on earth you could buy the same parcel of land in Indonesia or China or Malaysia or the United States of America or Canada or France or New Zealand. So we must dispense from our mind this idea that to stand up for ourselves is somehow xenophobic. To stand up for ourselves makes abundant sense, and to be a greater participant in the wealth that we generate is what we're going to have to economically do if we have a future.
While other coalition members were unwilling to buy into the argument, graziers and beef producers welcomed the proposed investment, saying it would strengthen the relationship between Australia and Indonesia.
Foreign investment has always been a part of our landscape. We shouldn't be frightened of it, but at the same time keep our eye on it and be aware of the quantum, if you like. But I think we shouldn't be frightened by it. We should be embracing it and working with it.
You know, new investors come into the industry and they bring in more capital generally, which would mean that they're putting in more waters and fences and more development on the properties that they own, and which usually means more cattle numbers. So, and then when they sell out, well, you've got a better developed property left behind, and that's been happening over many years.
That's not the sentiment Barnaby Joyce is tuning into. He says Australians everywhere are justifiably worried about losing their land.
It's the issue I hear over and over and over again on the streets of the suburbs of Australia and in the regional towns and in the country. So it's to the Australian people that they have to put their shoulder to the wheel if they want this issue to resonate in Canberra. And their time is now if they want to do something about it.
Kerry Brewster, Lateline.